If you're planning to raise funds for an art project, brace yourself, because what you're in fact doing is joining a resistance movement. A group of us in recent years embarked on a fundraising campaign to build the Belfast Metropolitan Arts Centre, the £17 million MAC that Will just referred to. This is now one of the greatest edifices in the city centre. It has 2 theatres, it has 3 visual art galleries, dance studios, and room for 5 resident theatre companies. It's a fabulous asset for the city. But anybody who's in this business of raising funds for the arts will always come across this question. It's a very difficult one. Would you not be better building a hospital or a school with the money? Now, the fact is that the arts are not an emergency service. They're not a requisite like education. It's all very well for me to say, but sure, if you have an arts centre, life will be so much better. But sure, then a new kitchen, a bigger car, a holiday would make my life a lot better too. So the challenge is really to try and prove that the arts matter, prove that they're worth investing in, and make the point that if you don't invest in the arts, you're actually puncturing social cohesion, you're actually degrading economic ambition, and you're letting general society, the rest of us, deflate into oblivion. When Haris Pasovic, the Bosnian filmmaker and artist, invited Alan Little, the BBC war correspondent, back to Sarajevo to mark the 20th anniversary of the siege, Alan Little had replayed some of his reports from that time back in '92. And he was saying that in Sarajevo, which was under siege, 11,000 people were killed in the end. It was under daily rocket attack, gun attacks, shells. And in the midst of this, in the Sarajevo Youth Theatre, it's not a very prepossessing building, but in this very building, people would come out at night ducking gunfire, risking their lives to see a play. And Alan Little actually went to see Waiting for Godot. Susan Sontag had heard about this and very bravely brought her production of Waiting for Godot to the Sarajevo Youth Theatre for 5 nights. And he said he was staggered that people were risking their lives coming to see the play. And Haris Pasovic said to him, he said, in war, the most important thing is not to survive. The most important thing is to remain human. And he said, art is a primary need. It's like food, it's like sex, it's like water. That's how critical it is. And he went on to say that the arts are actually a resistance. They are a form of resistance. They reject violence, they reject inhumanity, they reject division and hatred. And if you consider it in that context as a resistance movement, and then move over to the more sort of relatively peaceful West, where we are, I don't think that the arts are any less of a resistance movement just because we're not in a war situation. The battle is still just as critical. Let's take the Walker Theatre in Indiana. I've only picked Indiana quite at random as a symbol of, a Midwestern state which has never been invaded, has never suffered war, and yet still acknowledges that there is a battle on, and the battle is with mass communications. The paradox, of course, is that mass communications has brought culture to all our homes. But what it's also brought is a division between us, the audience, and the art, whether it's visual art, whether it's drama, whether it's music. We're not in the same room anymore. And so somewhere like the Walker Theatre is providing this, and their slogan is actually to educate, to entertain, and to empower. And that business of empowering is so critical, because that's what the arts do. They bring us back together again. We are able to share the experiences and the thoughts that we must. It doesn't just stop there. There's a 50-seat theatre in the University of New South Wales. It does exactly the same job. It's making the point that we have to have a place where we can be in the same room as creativity. Believe it or not, this is actually in Soweto. It's in the middle of Soweto. For decades, Soweto was just the poorest, most brutally suffering township in South Africa, which saw the horrors that few of us will ever survive. not a place that people would want to go to necessarily, not a place that they would invest in. Now that they've done this, they're actually redefining themselves as a community. And I think that that's where the next point that I want to make, is just the second point, is that the arts and the art infrastructure is actually the city's wardrobe. It's the community's clothes. It defines who we are, what we look like, how we feel. It makes us go out and get inward investment. It makes us talk to people and be proud of who we are. It gives us that sense of citizenship again and pride. And so if you look at Belfast with the MAC, the Lyric, the Ulster Hall, the Waterfront Hall, the Crescent Arts Centre, we have a fantastic arts infrastructure in the city, but it goes beyond. After 1994 and the ceasefires in Northern Ireland, more than £200 million was spent on infrastructure. So you've got an award-winning theatre in Armagh, Ballymena, in Omagh, in Coleraine. The whole of the north now has an arts infrastructure that can stand shoulder to shoulder with anywhere else in the developed world. And that is so critical to offering and creating a sense of pride. So if you're in that business of trying to raise money for an arts project, and if somebody comes up and says to you, you'd be far better building a hospital or a school, just remember that you're a proud member of a resistance movement that's going to make changes. Future generations are going to be very, very thankful and very grateful to the heroic efforts that you will have made. And just think how cool every town would look if they had something like the MAC. Thanks very much.